Okay, so I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I'd also like to thank SPI for funding my grant application, which is a truly rare event. Since this is the University of Chicago, I have to be serious, so I can't tell jokes like, when I was a boy, the Dead Sea was only sick. I can't tell that joke. Okay, I haven't presented this paper before, so it could be a fiasco. One tip in presenting, how much time do I have left? 5 minutes? Don't have that many slides. So it's a fairly simple idea. Unfortunately, Alex did the same thing, but we did it a little bit differently. So what we looked at, we did this in a framework where, well, I mean, I'll just go through the slides. It's easy enough. There's only 9 of them. I've already done one. So, non-financial incentives on worker motivation. I'm not doing a literature review. There's lots of literature on this. All sorts of things that come into play. And we are looking at how donating worker earnings for voluntary extra work, not required extra work. And you could look at this as a form of corporate social responsibility. Well, that doesn't make sense yet, but you'll see it, how that affects worker behavior. You can interrupt me anytime you like, by the way. So there's this notion that corporate social responsibility, what is that? That means like, oh, when Exxon Valdez had their big oil spill, they went around showing how good they were for the environment. Or they could show that, in this case, they're going to make contributions to charity, that they're really a good corporation, and they care about the world and the people in it, okay? So this can make the company look more attractive to the workers. It could affect their motivation. It could make them, so some firms actually do this already. They try to say, we're great, and try and get more applicants. And it might be that giving these people a chance to work for a social goal would increase their motivation and engage them more within the firm. So we test this idea. We have a real effort task. We took data from my creativity paper, actually. It was real data, pen and paper, real data. And we asked people to enter the data into an Excel file. We didn't say anything about whether we had already entered the data or not. We didn't say we didn't, we did. Of course it had been entered, but we didn't say anything about it. So they were free to believe whatever they liked. So we had people enter the data for an hour for 12 cents per person entered, and there were 8 separate items being entered. And people made a reasonable amount of money. We calibrated it. I think they made about $15 for an hour on average, something like that. We had, I guess it's on the next slide, we had a design that caused a lot of work for people, for my co-authors really, but it was very clean. So we only had one person in a room. We had no peers in the room, nobody else. You're just by yourself. The experimenter might come in and see if you have any questions, but so we had each session, if you want to call it a session, had 3 people because we had 3 offices. Each person was in their own office, so we had to do a lot of this. And I thank my co-authors for actually doing the work because I didn't do any of it. So they did this for an hour. They knew there was going to be something second that was going to come, but we didn't tell them what it was. And then at the end of the hour, we told them that you can stay for up to another half an hour if you like, but you're not required to do so, okay? And then what we did is we had 5 treatments varying how much they're paid, how much is generated from their work effort, and whether the amount was paid to themselves or to a charity of their choosing out of 4 different charities. We varied the amounts, and you'll see that on this next slide. So 5 treatments in the baseline, they weren't paid anything in the second stage, okay? And we do see some effort. Probably a lot of it from anecdotal is that people wanted to finish the person that they were already doing, so they stayed a little bit extra. But some people, apparently, they came and they asked questions about, you know, what about this? Is this right? They seemed to care about whether they were doing it right and whether it was accurate. So there may have been, you can call it intrinsic motivation. We have charity too, so you might remember, or you might not, but we paid 12 cents before, and now we're either going to pay 2 cents or 8 cents. We tried 12 cents, and everybody stayed, so we had to cut it down. So we paid 2 cents in charity too. It was credibly paid to a charity, choice of 4. How do we do this credibility? We filled out a check, and we put the check in an envelope with a stamp on it addressed to the charity, and gave them the envelope. And they could put it into the mailbox or not. I know some people did, because I got notes from the charities thanking me because it was my check, my personal check. So, you know, it's pretty credible. Here's a check, unless I'm bouncing checks for small amounts of money, which is going to cost me more than the check, it's credible. Worker 2, they received 2 cents. Charity 8 and worker 8, same thing, but it's 8 cents. Anybody have a prediction? You guys?
Checks for 8 cents.
I'm running checks for, no, the amounts could be small, they could be larger. It wasn't 2 cents, it was 2 cents per individuals. There are individuals that they receive. Yeah, for the group, and I didn't write checks for 2 cents. Good question though. I'm sorry?
So if you could go online, right, and talk to the students and say, we're going to make the donation to the charity right now. But then if the contribution is too small, you can't make it online contributions, so the check is a really option.
Well, I didn't know about that. I'm from a different century, so I don't know about these things. You know, remember the Dead Sea, so, you know. This is the main slide. Okay. So we didn't have 3 people in one session, but otherwise we have 30 in each one. These are the stay rates. These are if you stayed at all voluntarily for the up to a half an hour. You can see there's a big variation from 24% to 93%, so it makes a big difference. Some people stayed in the baseline, I mentioned that. Lots of people stayed when they were going to get 8 cents. When they're going to get, and almost as many with charity for 8 cents. You see a pretty big difference here, 2 cents and worker and charity. A lot more people are staying for charity. When it's a low amount of money, basically people stay more when it's for charity, and when it's a high amount, they stay more when it's for themselves. That's the main thing in the paper. That's really the whole punchline. We have to control, I'm not going to show you regressions, we have regressions. We have to control for how much they entered in the first hour, so, because there could have been differences across the treatments just by, you know, random draw. Okay, so we control for that. We look at the data that was entered in the second, the voluntary up to half an hour. Then we look at the ratio of this to this for all people, and we look at the ratio for those people who stayed. So we get something for the intensive margin and the extensive margin, which is one thing that Alex's paper didn't get at. And you'll see, so when there's no pay, it's pretty small. It's not much larger at worker 2. In fact, there's no significant difference here. It goes up a lot when you have, when it's charity, and it's not really different whether it's charity 2 or charity 8. So this is support for sort of a warm glow type of story. And worker 8, it goes up higher. You can see that this is not really driven by the difference here, okay? Whereas this is low and this is low, and again, overall, we're not getting a significant difference. That's our main result, okay? Might be our only result. Oh, I tried this. This is probably a silly idea. Can anybody actually see this? I tried it, but I didn't, you know. It was, I don't know if it worked. I already said that about the highly sensitive rate, depending on the payment arrangement. Basic results, where pay equals 8, better production by paying workers directly than sending it to a charity, and it's driven by a difference in the intensive margin, so it's not determined by whether people stay or not, but it's how much they produce when they stay. When it's 2, small pay, better production by paying directly to the charity rather than paying workers directly, and differences on both the extensive and the intensive margins. How much time do I have left? It won't take me that long. I'm standing between you and lunch, so. All right, paying workers 8 leads to higher production than paying 2 to a charity, but it's not a huge difference. Well, no, that's not true. There's a difference, but paying 2 to a charity is a much more cost-effective. Which should a company do? It depends on the production function. If the wage is a really large part of your production costs, then maybe you should just pay 2 to a charity. If it's a small portion, probably you should do the other. Okay? It turns out that there's a bigger gap between worker rate and charity too for males. I have no hypothesis about this. We found a significant difference. That said, we found no other significant differences. So if you test enough things, you're going to find a significant difference somewhere. We found a difference. I'm not pushing it. Okay. When you pay 0, there isn't much difference than when you pay 2 to the worker. Okay. But there's a big difference when you pay it to a charity. Maybe there's some intrinsic motivation. And this is my last slide. So you could think of this as potentially a win-win outcome for firms and charities. The firm could look good. This is voluntary extra work. You pay the money to the charity makes more money. It's even possible that workers like it because they feel like they're doing good. So it could be a win-win-win. You could potentially invite a firm to participate in a project that would engage its workers. You could even have workers choose projects. That's another thing you could possibly do. So it could be that workers are happier to work for a firm that cares about their project, and that the extra time work raises money and benefits the socially conscious firm. That's my whole talk. Anybody have any questions? With 9 slides, it goes quick. Questions?
So that I agree with the story you're trying to say. I'm just surprised about the result about worker 2 and charity 2. So, I mean, it's the same amount of money, right? A worker could just say, well, I take the money and then I donate it to a charity that I choose.
No, it's like the money is so small, I don't really want it, but if I give it to charity, it will feel good. I mean, that's the story. It's feeling good versus a small amount. They already worked for an hour. They already made, the usual amount of money that they make for an hour. So the extra money, if it's small, maybe you feel differently. I mean, that's my intuition. But if you make it a big enough wage, it triggers a different emotion. Please.
But I think it's kind of strange if you think about it, the company tells you, how about you work more and you donate money, but by the way, you could only have the wage. I mean, it is kind of egoistic motivation by the company to, okay, I get more work done and I have to pay less. I mean, from that side, I don't know how from the worker side, it's not perceived as something good from the company. When you perceive it as something bad, it's like they want to save money.
I'm not quite following that. So a firm offers you an opportunity to do extra work.
But the company doing it for its own good, because they have to pay
There's always that issue. So if you're in a gift exchange experiment and you find that a wage of 70 gives you the maximum profit as a firm, and you give a wage of 70, and that's a generous wage, in some sense it's way more than the minimum. Even if the worker thinks that you only did it to maximize your own money, in some sense you're still nice, and you see effort go up. This is always a question. If you're maximizing your profits but it helps somebody else, you get credit for it. So, I mean, I would make that comment. You don't have to say it. Maybe the company's doing it for its own purposes. That's what firms do. When Exxon puts up an ad about we're so good with cleaning up Alaska, everybody knows that they're doing it because they want to make more profits. I mean, that's what companies do.
I mean, if the company would double the wage and say, like, by the way, when you work more and you double the wage, we give it to a charity, I would say, okay, we need to get the company.
That's fine. So it could be a different calibration in the field. That's fine. And we just chose what kind of work Catherine, and I'll get you out.
Here. Going back to where you started your talk.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be, so you said it makes your workers like the firm better if they have some charitable connections.
Right.
So what if the firm advertised ahead of time that it was going to allow workers to work overtime and pay for a charity, or not for a charity? and then the workers can sort
Yeah.
into the firm, then you would get to test your hypothesis at the beginning, which is whether they like the firm better or not.
That's true.
Because of the
That's true.
charitable opportunity.
That's a nice idea. Yeah. I get this young lady and then you're up. Yeah.
So given that this charity connection works for small amounts, then in the long run this may stop working. If enough money is accumulated, people may say, I think because it may reach the level of as if paying 8 cents, then
So I don't
long
particularly
run.
know anything about the levels and what's going to apply out in the field. Basically, this is, in my eyes, this is a demonstration that what people prefer to do, charity or individual, depends on how much you pay. Okay. I don't know how long this would last. I'm not making any statements about that. I'm just saying this is what we found, and potentially it could apply to a field situation. Yeah. I'm not trying to claim that much. David, I'll get you after Judd. Yeah.
So synthesizing sort of the last few comments, one thing that you could do or have your
Do you want to write the paper?
Yeah,
for us?
there's no longer. No, I mean, but you could, without having to rerun the study, right, you could recruit these particular subjects back
We could.
for the same and just
We
look
could.
by treatment to see, is it the case that, you know, I work for the 2 cents to the charity, but I've gotten pissed off with the firm for sort of tricking me into it. And if the recruitment rates are the same across all of them or higher than charity ones, you can address all these comments.
Yeah, that's true. We could do that. I have to get my co-authors back from Spain to do work on it.
It's the emails,
We
right?
are
You don't need to
working
bring them
for it.
in, you just need to see if they will.
No, it's a good idea. David.
I just wanted to point out that Google is very interested in this kind of stuff, and
Okay.
you know, among the things that they do are they match employees' gifts to any charity by $6,000 a year, and any volunteer work that I do for any charity of my choice, they donate an extra $10.
So is the belief that that's going to help them make more money?
So it's a little fuzzy how the strategy works, right? The $6,000 gift match thing is considered a benefit, like one of our fringe benefits.
But Google will do it even if it broke even or not, because they like actually.
Yes, yes, I think that's probably right.
So it's not just their image; it's what they actually want to do.
Yes,
That's hard to say.
I'm pretty sure that that's true, but
Or at least
it
the
gets
workers
confusing
like to
as to
believe that.
which things are actually optimal to do. Anyway,
That's nice.
I'm not going to be at Google much longer, but I do know folks who are involved in promoting the gifts and charitable volunteering at Google, and if researchers are interested in getting in touch with them, I may be able to
Sure.
facilitate
If
connections
anybody
before I
wants to
do.
talk to me, I'm happy to talk to them.
Sort of general
Especially if they
knowledge.
have money. They like it. There's a saying, money's not everything, but it sure beats whatever the hell comes in second. There's another one, charity starts at home, but I didn't say that. Anybody else?
Do you think this difference between the charity 2 and 8 condition is related to the scope and sensitivity and evaluation literature?
I don't know about literature, but I think of it as, I think what you mean is that it doesn't matter how much you're actually, which is what I think was kind of a warm close story, although I never really understood what warm close meant. I kind of think of it as that.
So if your attention is just drawn to this opportunity, that
Yeah.
again, related to the previous
Yeah.
comments, if you bring them in day after day, the attention to that
I mean, you're
opportunity
contributing to a
diminish
charity,
pretty
you're not
quickly.
really thinking about how much you're contributing to the charity, basically. I think that's, I mean, if you make it a big enough difference, it might do something. 2 cents versus $5, but I have 1 minute, so. Any more questions? Thank you.